What's going on, guys? I'm here today with John Sonmez, which is the founder of simpleprogrammer.com. It's an awesome different site with a ton of information for all kinds of different programmers. He's got more video courses than I can count on every subject from all kinds of programming languages and platforms and everything. He's helped millions of people with YouTube and his outreach on the internet, and it's amazing. I've been following him forever, and he's the best-selling author of the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide, which I have my Kindle copy right here. Highly recommend you guys check that out. John, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy that you're here, dude. I've been following you on YouTube forever, and I'm really excited for this.
Awesome.
So why don't you I mean, I know you have like a 2-hour playlist on YouTube with your whole story and like what you've been through, but can you give us like the abridged version, the short version of kind of what you went through and how you ended up starting Simple Programmer?
Yeah. I mean, every time I tell the story, I tell a little different, right? Because there's always like different angles. You can always view it like from a different slice, right? It's
Totally.
like, so what am I going to tell it to today? I think today, I would talk about, so from the YouTube angle, since we're here on YouTube, which is that, I started out in life as a very shy, unconfident person, very having a lot of social awkwardness, very unathletic, like all the kind of things, like very lazy, like all the kind of things that I'm sort of the opposite of today, right? And at least I aspire to be, right? And try to teach other people how to be. And so I I learned a lot, like just like facing my own demons, right? Going through and just, figuring out things and building up confidence and like overcoming all the obstacles that I came through in my life. And that kind of set the stage. So this started to happen, this process started to happen when I was, just in high school, just getting out of high school, starting to kind of realize I had this moment that clicked for me where I woke up one morning and I said, why not me? And I thought, and what I was referring to was like, why all these other people around me that are, that are the cool kids or doing the things that they like, and why not me? Why am I, different? And my answer was, there's no reason, only my mindset, and I could be whatever I wanted to be. Like I could just set and decide who I wanted to be. So, fast forwarding a little bit, I went and I made some changes in my life then. I started to think in terms of act as if you're already who you want to be. I started thinking in terms of pretending to be what I wanted to be, like playing the role of who I wanted to become until you actually stepped into those shoes and became that role. And so I ended up becoming a software developer, self-teaching myself mostly, and having a career as a software developer for about 15 years. And I did good in my career, but I didn't do great, right? Like it wasn't the stellar level that I wanted to be. And I was overcoming challenges. I still had a lot of challenges, ups and downs, but I was becoming a better version of myself. And then what ended up happening was probably about 8 years ago, I hit this point in my life where I had a lot of fears, and I hadn't conquered these fears. I've been trying to go around these fears, and I finally figured out how to conquer those fears. And when that happened, like a shift happened, and I kind of revitalized my life. I became what I call a finisher, like started finishing projects, kind of adopted this bulldog mindset. I lost a bunch of weight because I had gotten out of shape, and I'd kind of lost that momentum after I tore my pec and I lost my identity. And I got some opportunities once I became a finisher. One of them was Pluralsight. End up doing a bunch of Pluralsight courses, and I had written an Android app and an iPhone app, and I was getting all these stuff done. I started Simple Programmer just as a blog around that time. And what ended up happening with the blog was I started getting all these opportunities from it. I was like, wow, this is like, people were contacting me saying, I read your blog, it was great. Or people would contact me for job opportunities. It was all of a sudden like my career started accelerating. I'd been working as a programmer, working my butt off, like doing good, learning all these technical skills, but nothing seemed to matter as much as this little bit of marketing of building my brand that mattered so much. And that was so pivotal. And all of a sudden, all the world kind of opened up to me. I had all these opportunities from freelancing, which I could never figure out how to do before, and consulting to, just good job offers and opportunities to speak and stuff. And so I really ended up going, as I started to go down that path, I started teaching other developers. Is kind of where I started, because I was doing technical stuff, right? I was doing technical courses, and I'm a programmer. I love doing technical stuff. But then I started to realize that the most valuable thing I could teach other developers was probably at that time it was personal branding. because I had figured like if I would have known this early in my career, I would have
Totally.
accelerated so much
Yeah.
better, right? And so I was like, I could probably teach people how to do this a much better way and get faster results than I did. And so I started teaching that. I started speaking at conferences, and that was a really popular topic. And I ended up putting out a course called How to Market Yourself as a Software Developer based on that. And then, as I started to go down that road, like more and more like soft skills type of questions started coming up, and people were asking more about this. And I was also getting into personal development. I was getting into things like Tony Robbins and Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and all these really good books, like the kind of stuff that sales and marketing people like live and breathe, but most technical people never heard of. But these are life-changing things. These are ways of viewing life that are so different, and it was changing me. And I was overcoming my fears and getting confidence and just changing my life in so many different ways. And so it sort of came to this culmination of where everything sort of shifted. I kind of realized that like my big mission in life is no longer going to be to teach people technical stuff, even though I enjoy doing that, but it's going to be to teach these life-changing life skills, soft skills as I call them, and some career development type of stuff, but to help people in all those areas. So everything ended up shifting in that direction. I ended up creating a YouTube channel, and at first it was like more technical questions, and first it was more career questions, but now it's kind of shifted to, I mean, where it's at now, but it's everywhere.
Totally.
It's philosophy, it's life, it's maximizing your potential. It's having this bulldog mindset, and so that's kind of where I'm at now.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's really, there's a ton of self-improvement stuff on your channel, and that's what I love about it, to be honest. That's what attracted me to it, because I was just like, wow, this guy is just wanting to improve himself and pushing forward. And you know what else? And I got to say this too, because when I first saw your stuff, I was like, okay, this guy says all this stuff. But then I started going back through your old videos, and I was like, holy shit, this guy wasn't kidding. Like, it's you now compared to where you were 4 or 5 years ago. Just on video, you can tell with the body language, with the way you talk, with everything. And that to me was like, wow, this guy like walks what he talks, and it's awesome. And it kind of inspired me to kind of do my channel, where I pretty much only talk about finishing. I only talk about marketing. I only talk about all of the kind of mental barriers that we have, because I feel like the technical stuff with the internet, like you can find everything these days, like the mental barriers are the things that are really holding people back these days. So that's a really cool story. I'm happy that you kind of shared that, because it kind of solidified some things that I was thinking about. So I'm curious about you, because I know you mentioned a couple times, like, this is a game dev channel that I'm on. And you mentioned a couple times that you actually thought about making games when you first started. Is that true?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that was the thing that really got me into programming, was this idea that of making my own games. Like one of the first things, and I think I told the story in the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide, is that one of the first things that got me started was I used to play these MUDs, these multi-user dungeons. For the millennials out there, think World of Warcraft without graphics. I know how boring would that be, but it's text adventures, but it's a MUD. I mean, but it's World of Warcraft. So I download like the source code from that, and I was hacking away on that to make my own game. And I always had these dreams of making my own games. And so that was really what really got me interested, because I was a big gamer, growing up and stuff. I still love to play games. There's just something about it. But I don't think I'll ever lose the love for that. But that was what sort of drew me in to the whole programming thing. I never ended up becoming like a game developer per se, but I did learn to develop games. I actually taught a couple of Pluralsight courses on game development, which was cool. Still someday I do think that maybe I will. I don't know. It's so appealing to me. So
well, it's definitely fun. But one thing I have to say though is the software, like, growing up, I always wanted to make games too, and I was scared that if I made games, because if you think about games, they really have no functional purpose, right? Like they're not like Microsoft Word, they're not like Microsoft Excel, like they don't save you time, but it's more of an emotional purpose in a way.
Right.
So like they're kind of hit or miss when you develop them. Like people are going to like them or they're not. Like, whereas software, like if you save people a bunch of time, even though it might be shitty software, they'll still kind of put up with it and save their time and do all that stuff. Not saying you should. That's not good software practice. But I'm curious, because I actually ended up going the programming route. I actually ended up doing a lot of software development stuff. Do you feel like that's a safer path in a way to kind of at least solidify and get your money right and all that stuff to kind of go down versus something like game development?
Gosh, that's such a hard, like, I would have conflicting, like, different versions of myself from different periods in
We're
my
gonna put you
life.
on the spot.
Well,
Yeah.
they would say different things, and I
Yeah.
think it's like, I mean, there's a pragmatic, practical answer, right? Which is no, just do software development, go and do something that's going to make money, invest that money, figure out, buy some real estate, like there you go, and there's that. But then there's also the answer of, you know what? Take shots, man. Like, what the fuck? Like, if you have to eat ramen noodle soup, but you're doing what the fuck you like, that is
Yeah.
like, that's a better way to live your life. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, your parents will disown you, and and it's not going to be
End up
luxury,
homeless.
but maybe you'll. I mean, but ironically, some of the people that, like, if you can really like live your life with reckless abandon, your chances of succeeding and becoming wealthy from that increase exponentially, right? It's
Totally.
and I guess now, see, I love answering questions like this, because now I just got the clarity in my own mind, right, from you asking this question. And so I would say this: it's if you pick a path, like either path is fine, honestly, right? So if you're going to go pragmatic and practical, then go all the way pragmatic, practical. Read the book "So Good They Can't Ignore You" by Cal Newport, and do what he says. Don't follow your passion. Just go and fucking figure out what is going to pay you the most money and do that, right? That's you solid, do solid investment, advice. I'd say go in real estate, but, do that and you'll have it. Or go the other way and just be like, you know what? Oh, shit. Dropped water all over my floor. Go the other way and just be like, look, what I'm going to do is what I want to do. I want freedom in my life. I want to do what I want to do. I have this dream of being a game developer or whatever it is, and, or making a YouTube channel on the internet. I mean, look at the crazy kind of shit that I do for a living now. I mean, who could believe that this is a job, right? I get paid for this. But like, pick that and just go hard into it. The problem is people are they straddle. They straddle the fence. They want the safety. It's like I say the same thing. Like, I'm against 401k and retirement investing, simply because it's like it's compounding interest, but it takes until you get to like 65, right? I mean, you can't even touch it until then or whatever. And it's like, well, like, fucking go full bore into the thing that you're going to go. Like, if you're going to go 401k and you're just going to say I'm going to retire at 65, then just do that and forget the other investments and don't touch real estate. Just do that. Okay. But if you're not, then go full the other way. Otherwise, you're kind of handicapping yourself, because if you're
Yeah.
taking some of your money that you could be investing right now or building into a business right now, and you're putting it away just in case as a backup plan, you're handicapping the chances of you succeed. Like, if you had that capital, if you had that fuel for for what you're trying to do, the riskier route, it'd have a higher chance of success. And so whichever path you choose, you just got to pick one and go so full into it. So that's where I would kind of land on that. Is like, I don't want to say either one is right or wrong, but it's like, what is absolutely wrong is the middle. Like, and that's most
Totally.
people live in anything they do. They're in that middle kind of gray, and that's why they fail. It's like I was just talking about. I did some video where I was talking about this like ditch we used to jump over as a kid, and the default behavior, it's inbuilt into people, is they would like run as hard as they can. They'd get with like 3 feet within before the jump, and they'd slow down because they're getting close to the edge, and then they would still jump. And you fall in every time. And like, if you live your life like that way, you're going to fall in. Instead, you either got to say, look, you're running. You see the edge of the ditch and you say, nope, not going to make it, not going to do it. Or you leap.
Yeah.
those,
You do one or the other.
yeah. But most people fall and they fall in the middle. So just don't fall in the middle.
Dude, no, that's totally resonating with me, because I posted a video the other day about how indecision in my life so many times was worse than making the wrong decision. Like, it was better to just move forward in the wrong direction than it was to just sit there and not make a decision. So I'm totally with you there at 100%. So I'm curious, because you've got an entire book about the software developer's career guide. You've got a whole book about what to do with your career. I hope I'm not putting you in a spot here, but I'm curious, like, what do you think do you think that's, some people are just better geared towards careers and some people are better geared towards entrepreneurs? Or do you feel like there's a kind of symmetry between them to kind of be both? Or do you feel like one's better than the other as far as like what you should do?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say that Well, okay, so freedom is something that most people can't handle, right? If you
That's
think about
interesting.
it, everyone wants, or most people want freedom, but when you give it to them, they can't handle it, right? And that's what I mean. People want to have a king. They want to be ruled. They don't want to not know what to do and have to figure it out for themselves to have that freedom. Like everyone thinks they want that, but then when they get it, right? And I struggle with it myself. I think we all, even if you figure out how to make the most of freedom, it takes discipline, it takes self-discipline in order. Sometimes I
Yeah.
have I have the occasional fantasy where I'm like, man, I wish I could just plug back into the matrix. I wish I could just take this, instead of taking the blue pill, and I could just work my regular 9 to 5 job and then come home and like just eat a regular dinner and just like play some video games and go to bed and wake up the next morning and do the same thing, because that's so much in some ways that's so much easier than waking up in the morning and having having a clean slate. Like, what am I going to do today?
Yeah.
Well, it's up to what I decide to do, but it's all on me, right? And so I have to just tell me what to do. I think sometimes it's easier to just like, and you probably have experienced this in a regular job too, in a career job, is that sometimes you're just like, I just wish someone would, if someone tells me what to do, you tell me what to do, I got it, boss, I can do it. But it's harder when you have to tell yourself what to do. You got to figure out,
Totally. I agree with that
and
100%.
and so I think some people are, better equipped for that. Like some people have to become entrepreneurs because they can't handle not having the freedom. And that's
Yeah.
where I ended up, but I was a career developer for a long time. I had plenty of jobs, and and I didn't know this about myself for sure. I always wanted to like become retired or something like that, but yeah, I would say that it's more just you like if you decide you're going to be an entrepreneur, then you just realize that it's going to be really hard and it's going to be difficult, but you're making the sacrifice for a reason. And just I'd say the biggest thing is just to know that freedom is hard. It is very difficult. You have to have self-discipline. You have to be able to motivate and drive yourself. You have to be able to work when you don't feel motivated, right? It's easier to be a slave than to be free, because when you're free, you don't know where what you're supposed to be doing. Like you have to find your own purpose and mission in life. Whereas when you're within the system and you know what you're supposed to do, it's easy to follow like someone else's rules. It's easy to just, as much as you feel the burden of being under their oppression, right? And you want to get out of it. It is a and you see that a lot of times in history, right? History shows this picture of people that get their freedom and then they're like, we don't want our freedom.
Yeah. Almost like a video game. Like you log in, you do the quest, you just go here, you do that. That's why so people I think are attracted to it, because there's a progression system, there's a number, it tells you good job when you're doing good, starts over when you're doing bad. Life doesn't seem really give you that same feedback.
Right.
It's interesting you say that, because I know for me personally, like when I was working on my development business and I had a marketing company, my income would be like a wave,
Hmm.
and I would make a bunch of money, and then I have money in the bank, and I would have suddenly choices and freedom, and then I would just get complacent and like I don't want to do anything now, and then
Right.
I would get so desperate that I need money now, so I got to work really hard, and then it would go back up, and yeah, so freedom not being able to handle, that's an interesting way to put it, because I agree with you. I think not everybody's cut out for that. Do you think that's a skill that you can acquire over time, like the discipline and all that stuff, like kind of build it into yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had to acquire it. Because the first 2 times I became an entrepreneur, I quit my job, I failed. So I'll give you the first one was, let me see what it was. It was I got this. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I was working at this job, this really good job as a software developer, doing like .NET stuff, web stuff, and actually some pretty cool M2M stuff. And these friends of mine said, "Hey, we're starting this. We have this payday loan business, and we'd like to hire you as a developer, and you work from home, and you'd be part of the company and whatever, right?" And so it was a good entrepreneurial thing. So I quit my job, and they gave me these lucrative terms. I think they paid me like $100,000 a year. Like they're gonna like this is like unheard of, right? And I get to work from home and build this crazy machine and stuff. And I'm not gonna say I didn't do work. I did work, but I was kind of waiting for them to tell me what to do, right? So I was sitting there. I remember, playing poker and playing Lord of the Rings online instead of busting my ass. Now, when they gave me stuff to do, I did it, but I wasn't proactive and I wasn't disciplined, right? And I was kind of like, for me, I was like, oh, look, I get to like get paid a lot of money and not have to work very hard. Like that was almost like, and that's not the attitude to have as an entrepreneur. You're not
Yeah.
making it that way. Like there's no free ride. Like the right attitude is now that I get to work twice as hard, right? Because it's my baby, right? And so what ended up happening was, I ended up, working for them or working with them for a year because I wasn't really working for them, right? I was part owner of that company, but of course it didn't work out because I was waiting for them to give me stuff. Like I wasn't disciplined enough. And then so I ended up going back to a regular job. So I had this regular job again. And then I met this friend who was selling Magic the Gathering cards online. And we ended up becoming good friends, and we were playing poker and we were doing our real estate and we're getting our real estate licenses. And then finally I quit this great job I had at HP because I was going to go and do this thing. And when I did that, I was going to like redesign his website and everything. And I ended up like just kind of like, I don't want to say like, I was working, but I was tooling around too much. Like I was having fun. Like I wanted to like, sort the Magic card, like do menial tasks and stuff that was mind numbing, that was fun to me, rather than getting down to business and actually like really, really producing work. And so that didn't last very long before I ended up going back to a full-time job. So those were like my entrepreneurial false starts because I didn't have the mentality, right? To some degree, I was still lazy. To some degree, I didn't have the self-discipline required, nothing like what I do now. But yeah, so I had to learn that. I had to figure it out. And by the third time around now, like I'm like, I became the super productive, super prolific, almost the complete opposite of what that was, because I learned the lessons from that. And I realized, the value of hard work, the value of getting down and really digging in and really putting in the effort.
What do you think actually taught you that lesson? Do you think it was like an emotional thing or financial thing? Like what do you think really like drilled that into your head to like really get that you need discipline to actually get places?
That's a good. I think there's a couple of factors. Like there's a few different things. I mean, one of the big things was that the turning point where I became a finisher. Like I had this Android app, my first Android app I was creating, and I got less than halfway through, and I didn't want to do it. I was done. Like I thought it was a fun project, but then I was like, no, you're gonna finish this, John. You're gonna fucking finish this whole thing. And so I forced myself like 2 hours a day to just work on it, just to progress. I had, storyboard, like I was running it like I had a Kanban board and I had the different stories, and I was like, you just have to pick the next thing and start working on it, just 2 hours every day. And eventually I completed it and I sold it and I put it in the App Store. And I was making money. Like it wasn't great money, but it was, I got mentioned in like Shape magazine, and I sold like a couple hundred copies in one day and something like that. And so I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I thought about all the projects where I wasn't a finisher, where I didn't finish, and I just wasted effort by getting 90% done with something or 40% done with something, and how much more valuable it was to finish. And then, I started to think about my life, and I started to think about like this concept I talk about on my YouTube channel a lot, which is the someday concept, right? And I talk about how, someday everyone thinks that they'll be a rock star or they'll be rich, or they're like, and they think that someday that this is gonna happen for them, but it's not gonna happen. Like when you play it forward, it's like the only way it's gonna happen. Like if you want to live the life, if you're like, well, someday, when I get rich, I'll get a Lamborghini. Bullshit. Like that's not going to just happen. It doesn't matter. Like you're not like going to grind through your regular job and that's just suddenly some magic opportunity is going to happen. It's going to be because you actually like architected in your mind the plan to get there, and you hustled and did the work. And so when I realized that, when I was like, if I ever want to reach my fitness goals, if I ever want to reach my financial goals, if I ever want to build a business, I am going to have to make the plan and do the work now. That's what changed my mindset. And and a lot of it too was just this realization that the things that maybe don't make you not necessarily the most happy in life, but the most fulfilled. Like if you think about the moments that you're most fulfilled, it's when you did some hard ass work, right? You accomplished something. You went through some pain and came out the other side. Like those are the things. And so those are the things that we run away from and shy away from in life. But those are actually the most important things. And so a lot of what I do now, sometimes, I was just talking to a buddy of mine and he's like, well, why do it the hard way? And I was like, because it's fucking hard. because that is the value in it. Like when you start to see the value in doing hard things, like just because of the growth that you get and the fulfillment that you get from doing that, then you're not so concerned about the results anymore. And it's not just about hacking your way through life. It's about how can you actually challenge yourself and grow as a person. And when you have that drive, it's a totally different thing.
I agree. I think it's something that probably has to be cultivated over time. I mean, we did this thing on my channel because now that I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm sure I subconsciously stole some of these ideas from you. But like I have a video called Be a Finisher, and it's specifically about that. And that inspired me to do this thing that I called Finish Friday, where I would take an old project on my hard drive that was sitting there, like an old game that I like half finished. Nice. And I would finish it live. The whole thing was completed or deleted. I sit on stream live and I complete it in front of everybody, or I delete the project completely. And it started out as kind of like a publicity stunt in a way, like kind of like I'm going to show people that finishing is possible. But I noticed what you're talking about, like immediately after doing that like 8 weeks in a row, and like there was a big ass workload and a ton of stress and like people watching me and everything. I started to realize, like I started to enjoy that. Yeah. Like okay, this like triggered something in me that was like not there before. Like it was kind of like a motivating factor. So if anybody's listening to this and they don't feel like they have that drive, I feel like that starting point is probably the hardest part. Like once you get the ball rolling, it's easier to kind of push along. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. It's all, if you can just, one of the greatest skills that you can get in life is the ability to do things without feeling motivated, right? And what that requires is it's like the rare moments of life when you have clarity, right? When you're like, I should really do this, and you're like, it's not stress induced, you're not in a bad emotional state, but you have clarity for what you actually want. You can kind of see through the clouds. When you are in one of those moments, that's when you decide what your path is, and you commit to that path, and you know that you made that decision in a good frame of mind, right? So when you actually go down that path and it gets hard and you're like, I don't really actually feel like getting this goal anymore. You're like, bullshit. You had a bad day. You were sleep deprived. You're fucking hungry. You're tired. The clarity mind version of yourself set this goal. So he's smarter than you. He knows, right? This is the true version of you. This is the golden, you need to listen to this person. So I don't care if you're fucking motivated. You get up and you fucking do it, and you will, this is the right way, right? When you're in the right frame of mind, you made the decision, now stick with it. And so that's the key thing is to remember, is that it's like, it's not all passion, it's not all motivation. It's the few moments of fucking clarity that you have in your life, and we don't have that very many of them, where you set the course and then you just trust the good version of yourself the rest of the time, and you just barrel through it. And who cares, right? I mean, some motivation comes and goes, passion comes and goes, but if you just get started and you just get the ball rolling and you get the momentum is huge, then it's going to carry you through. And that's the thing. Because most people don't get results in life because they don't have that ability. But if you have that ability, and it's exactly that finisher mindset, it's amazing. The things that you'll be able to accomplish.
And that's interesting you put it that way, because like most people's self-concept, at least mine, was that like I'm just me all the time. Like I'm just, right now when I'm tired and hungry, I'm equally as capable of making decisions as when I wasn't. But it seems like you actually look at yourself in different stages of like either strength or like ability or whatever. It's interesting that you would say like the clarity me is kind of more clear on this decision than that. That's a good way to look at it. I think that's good. I'm curious. So we talked about discipline and motivation. Have you ever been on the opposite of the spectrum, where you worked on something for so long and you just felt like burnt out, where you like didn't want to touch it or look at it at all? Not even like lack of motivation, but just like too much. Have you ever been there?
All the time. Oh,
really? Okay.
All
that's
the time.
Interesting.
Everything. If you want to write an 800-page book, I got that. Like, you will get there after chapter 4. Because, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, different people, you might make it a little bit further, right? But it's the same thing. I mean, heck, I ran a full marathon this year, and guess what? Guess how everyone feels at mile 20? Fuck this. Why did I sign up for this? I'm burnt. I can't go any more miles. But you just do it. You just trudge through it, and you finish it. You know, and so I feel like that all the time. I mean, heck, sometimes I'm like, I literally wake up and I'm like, all right, I got to shoot 2 YouTube videos today. I'm like, ah. And I'm like, are you serious, dude? Like, are you serious? Like, I have to smack myself. I'm like, you are making money just talking about whatever the fuck you want, and you don't want to do this, right? Because you're burnt out on this. How could this possibly be? You can't control that stuff. You just have to move on. You just got to push it. You just say, well, fuck, my mind is making up some bullshit. That's what it is. But like, what helps though? Here's what helps in those situations is I have to ask myself. You know, sometimes I do this in the middle of a run when I'm like getting ready to just give up. I'm like, who are you? Like, are you what you represent? Are you this bulldog? Like, what is your identity? Are you this fucking bulldog mindset? Are you the guy that does this? Are you the guy that inspires other people and motivates other people? Like, what are you actually fucking made of? Because now's the time where you prove it, right? Because now you feel burnt out. Now you feel like you don't even want to see a fucking page, write another sentence in a friggin' book again. Who cares about a software developer's career? I don't give a shit, right? You know what I mean? Like when that's the moment where you have the chance to really prove who you are and decide who you are, who you're going to be, because those are the defining moments in life. And so I remember that, and I remind myself that this is a defining moment. And a lot of times that gets me through it. And I'll tell you that on the other side, like that when you start to feel burnout, and again, I'm not saying that it's not possible to like work too hard and have some kind of a medical definition of burnout. Maybe that's possible. But a good book to read on that before making that decision would be Grant Cardone's "Be Obsessed or Be Average" book, Boba. But what I'm saying is that in the majority of cases where you feel burnout, where I felt burnt out, you're 3 feet from gold. Because a majority of people will drop off at that stage, and like if you can push through that feeling and do what 99% of people do not do, that's where the herd thins out, and that's where their competition is small, and that's where the real gold is. And if you can make it through that wall, that barrier, not only will motivation eventually come back and you'll feel refreshed again, but that's where the rewards are. And most people never, they don't realize how close they are, right? I mean, most people, they never do something long enough to get that benefit. And if you do something long, I mean, I guarantee you, like think about Michael Phelps, right? The best swimmer of all time, right? He trains like 6-7 hours a day. He's only missed 2 days of training in, I think it was like 14 years or something. It might be even more ridiculous than that. So do you think that he fucking felt burnt out from swimming? I mean, every day, 6-7 hours of training. Can you imagine? He must feel burnt out every single day, but he does it anyway, right? He pushes through it, and that's what it takes to be a champion. And so yeah, I get the whole thing, and people are like, oh, it's not good for your health or your family or, whatever to be burnt out. And I get all that. But do you want to be a fucking champion? If you don't, then okay, that's fine. If you want to live a mediocre life, I'm not going to judge you. But I'm just saying, like don't necessarily take that as a signal that, oh, I need to stop. This is not the right. Maybe it means you need to fucking plow harder because you're close to you're like Odysseus, like you're close to the goal. Like that when you get close to the finish line, that's when the winds are going to blow hardest against you in the opposite direction. And so a lot of times that's a signal for me. I'm like, I don't feel like fucking doing it. I better fucking do it.
There's a lot of times in my life personally where I felt burnt out, like at that 90% mark, like you're saying, and I would stop and be like, oh, I'm going to come back to it, but I'm just burnt out. But I never came back to those things. Yep. And those things did. And I think if there's one thing I've learned, especially the last 12 months, is if you feel like taking a break from being burnt out, push yourself past the finish line, then take the break.
Exactly.
Like finish the damn thing first and then go do that. And that's something that like I totally, a year ago, me would not have agreed with. I'd be like, no, you feel burnt out, you got to take care of yourself. But yeah, dude, you got to power through that shit. Because I think have you read the War of Art?
Oh yeah, I love that book. It's one of my top books.
That's a fantastic book for talking about that. When I read that book and it kind of personified that whole experience of like the resistance of like something in your brain fighting you from stopping, I was like, okay, well, let's do it then. Let's get our sword out and fight this shit. And I feel like that really helped me. So anybody that's struggling with that, I would recommend to read that book.
And that's an
Um,
awesome book just because like like this is for me when I read that book I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm not alone. Like this is the
yeah,
human
for real.
condition. This is like there's not something defective with me." And when you understand that, it's like now you've got the whole human race on your side. It's like
Yeah.
we can get through this together as opposed to when you feel like it's just you or there's some kind of defect in you.
Totally. And I've noticed that on my YouTube channel too, just sharing a lot of things that I felt like were super personal ended up being like super universal. And
Exactly.
that has helped me so much in life, just realizing, holy shit, there are other people out there that feel this way. Speak on that note though, one of the things I have talked about a lot on my channel is introverts.
Okay.
And you have a video called
Oh yeah.
Introverts Are Bullshit. And I fucking love that because I couldn't put it into words, but I feel like my introversion, at first I thought it was a thing, like a condition, right? Like
Right.
I'm an introvert and so I'm stuck as this thing and like I'm broken in some way and these guys are just better at this shit. But I realized like all of these different things that I had to learn, how to talk to people, how to reach out to people, how to land client deals, all this stuff that I was terrified to do. Like at one point I was terrified to get on the phone with
Yeah.
anybody. But they're skills that you learn. I'm curious if you can kind of reiterate that point, introverts are bullshit, and like your belief on that and where you stand.
Sure. So it's kind of interesting. Like I understand. I have to preface this by saying, yes, I've read all the psychology. I mean, I am an avid reader. I am familiar with all of the scientific literature and proof of introversion and extroversion, and personality tests, and all of that stuff. But I'm still gonna say it's bullshit because they're useful for seeing what that is like. It's useful for seeing how you're acting or how you're behaving right now and in this particular context, which is useful. I think personality tests to some degree are useful to see where your inclinations are right now. But we're all dynamic human beings. And one of the things that we love to do as human beings is we like to box things and label things. We like to put ourselves in a label. And unfortunately, sometimes when we do that, we also tend to adopt the victim mindset saying, well, that's just how I am. Like those are probably the worst words you can
Yeah,
ever
totally.
utter in your life is that's just how I am. Because that's fucking bullshit. You choose who you are. You decide who you're going to be on a daily basis and who you're going to be in the future. The choices you make today decide who you're going to be tomorrow, and you get to choose that. And so that's what I'm not against. Like I don't hate introverts, quote introverts. I just don't believe that they exist in the pure form. I don't believe that anyone is just an introvert, right? Because and I know myself, and I speak from experience, being someone who would have been ultimately classified as the biggest introvert ever, right? And I know it's not just being shy; it's where you get your energy from. I know this is what people say, but you know what? I get my energy from spending some quiet time alone, but I also get my energy from being on fucking stage and like screaming and like hanging out with people. You know what I mean? And so I know that I'm capable of both of those things of generating energy, and I think we all are. If we're honest with ourselves, it's just contextual. And some of it, a lot of it is just the barriers. Like when we put ourselves into label, like you said, if you just say I'm an introvert, then you get to excuse yourself from a lot of the stuff that is uncomfortable for you, right? I mean, you could say the same thing with labeling yourself in a lot of other things as well, but especially introverts or people who like to label themselves as introverts like to be able to let themselves off the hook of, especially in my audience, like talking with girls and
Yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
and all of these things. And I'm like, no, it's bullshit. Don't like okay, fine, then you're an introvert, but overcome your fears anyway. Like, I mean, do the thing that's uncomfortable for you that is against your nature. Who cares? Like, you want to accomplish something in life. Life doesn't care whether you are an introvert or not, or an extrovert. Life cares about whether you want a result. You got to fucking do the thing that's going to give you the result. And so, like, it's easy to hide behind that mask, I think. And so I just, obviously I have to label people. Obviously we have to use labels. I mean, obviously, we have to say, well, that's a chair. Right. And even
Right.
though all the chairs are different, and this one, we have to use some kind of name for a thing. But the less that we can do that with ourselves, the better, right? It's better to start adapting the vocabulary of I'm acting in this way right now, or in the past I've acted this way, or this is what, because this
Yeah.
is that gives you the sense of being dynamic, that you're and believe me, and like you said, like if you don't believe what I'm saying, like if you're watching this right now, go back to my channel and look at my old YouTube videos and see
I
if I'm
recommend that you
fucking,
do that.
because I'm recording videos every day. So there's a lot of shit that it would be really fucking hard for me to fake, right? I mean, you know what I mean? I can't bullshit this kind of stuff. And so you look at the old John and you say, that guy kind of seems more introverted and like, or I mean, even if you don't use those labels, you know, definitely different personality, like different, right? And compared to me today, because I am reinventing myself because I get to decide who I am. And most people never do that. So, and a lot of reasons why is because they're stuck in these identities, these things that they believe I am an introvert or I am this or whatever that is. Bullshit. You know, that it's just a label that we've used to identify a set of attributes which are, like I said, dynamic, and they're very contextual based, because you can take the exact, I mean, I used to play Magic the Gathering, right? And you would go and there would be these like really dorky kids that would be there, right? Would be totally quiet and totally introverted, except when when they're playing that tournament and they're fucking yelling in someone's face. I'm like, who is this person, right? It's because they're in that context, that environment where they feel safe and comfortable to be an extrovert and to get their energy from that. So it all is environment. It all is contextual, and it is what we decide in our mind. And so we can hide behind any number of excuses. We can give ourselves identities and labels, but you know, the question you should always ask yourself before you form an opinion, and I could be completely wrong. Maybe scientifically introversion or extroversion do exist, but here's the question I ask myself, and I would ask you, which is, does this serve me?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't serve me, I don't care if it's fucking truth, because it serves me so much better to say we're all dynamic and I can do whatever the fuck or be whatever the fuck I want than I don't care if it's true. It serves me, right? That belief, like,
I asked
beliefs
you that
should be
question in the
effective.
live stream. Like, can false beliefs actually serve you? And I totally agree with that answer.
Yeah.
Like, anything that follows I am, I think is extremely important. And it can be good important or bad important, like whatever you say. And I just know for me personally, like, I used to say I am an introvert, and that stopped me from going up and talking to people. It stopped me from answering the phone. It stopped me because I had an excuse.
Right.
Like, I'm that way, you know, like but the second I stopped doing that was when I decided to start a marketing company and meet people in person, which like made me shake and my heart beat fast, you know, but like it's something that like I've learned to kind of, we put labels on everything. I think that's just how the human brain works. Like,
exactly.
This is that. And sometimes that helps us. Sometimes it hurts us. And this is one of those things that hurts us. John, we're running out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. But who's one of your role models? I'm curious, like, who's the person you really look up to in life?
This is a tough one. I don't really have very many like real like role model. I mean, there's the fictional one is Hercules, right? From a kid, this is, you know, what I always wanted to be. I wanted, like, Hercules was always my big role model. And one of the reasons why is that this is a story that most people don't know about Hercules. Is at one point there's this story that Hercules was going down this path essentially, and there were two paths to go, and there was this one goddess who was like the goddess of pleasure, and she's like, oh, you need to go down my path, basically. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but because, you know, you'll have a life of luxury and it'll be beautiful and there won't be any pain and it'll be great and, you know, it'll be wonderful. And then there was this other goddess, and she was like the goddess of, I can't remember what it was, like, but she was like not as ornately dressed, and she's like, well, you know, if you go down this path, there's going to be pain and there's going to be suffering and your life is going to be hard and all these things, and but essentially you'll have glory, like you know, like this is and Hercules, he chose the hard path because it was fucking hard, right? Because, like, you know what I mean? And that's the thing is like, that to me, that's the mindset that I always want to have in life, is like, don't just choose the easy path. Like, choose the thing that's going to grow you, right? That's going to develop you. That's like, because that's the thing is, like, ultimately, I mean, all the other shit, like, I don't know what happens after we die, but I do know that we're not taking material shit with us, right? And I know that, like, if I'm going to work on anything, and the thing that makes my life more valuable anyway, and to be able to help more people anyway, like, you know, is to develop myself, is to become the stronger version of myself, which requires you to go through hard shit. And so, you know, subject that upon yourself rather than having the world, like, the victim has the shit come crashing down on them. Whereas, you know, the self-empowered person actively walks into the pain, walks into the shit. Like if you bring it, the same pain, if it's inflicted by someone else versus it's self-inflicted, has a totally different meaning and a totally different result, right? And so I want as little as possible for the world to dish me pain because I've already dished it to myself ahead of time. I've already given the toil. So Hercules has always been a big one. In recent times, a real person, it would be Grant Cardone. Honestly, like I feel like he's just he very much has that same mindset. He's a bulldog mindset, right? He's done real estate investment. He's done so many things, and he preaches a really good a hard message, but a good message. So yeah, I would say that's probably the closest.
Sell or Be Sold is a great book too.
Yeah,
he's awesome. Cool. Well, John, thank you very much for coming. So where can people find you on the internet?
So the best place is honestly just to go to my YouTube channel. Just search
We'll link
for
that below.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Simple Programmer. I've got a blog at simpleprogrammer.com, but I don't write as much there. Like I do 2 to 3 videos a day on the YouTube channel, and that's where I really spend my time. So.
Which, side note, everybody here that asks me how I post a video every day, this guy posts a video like multiple times a day, and it blows my mind. Like it's consistently every day. It's one of the coolest things ever. So John, dude, thank you so much. Everybody that's watching, buy his book. He's got the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. He's also got a book called Soft Skills, Software Developer's Life Manual. He's got Pluralsight courses, which we'll link all the stuff down below. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming out.
No, glad to do it, Tim.
All right, see you guys.